Hey YouTubers, it's Platt here, and today I want to show you how to make a Mr. Beer Kit better. So let's go! For those of you looking to get into home brewing or already kind of playing around with it, probably the easiest way to get started is to use one of the many home brewing kits out there. And if you're interested in homebrew kits, you can check back a series I did about some of the more popular homebrew kits. And in the future, I'll produce more videos on all the varieties of kits out there. But what I want to do today is to focus on Mr. Beer. Probably the most popular beer kit out there and the simplest one to use in my opinion. If you've made a couple of batches with the Mr. Beer kit, you know that you can make a decent beer fairly easy. But you're probably wanting to take it up a notch. And that's what I want to show you today. And how we're going to do that is the addition of grains and extra hops. Well, what we're going to do today is, I've taken the Patriot Lager. Now just looking at it, kind of implies a Samuel Adams style lager. So what we're going to do is use the grains we would use if we were making a clone batch of Samuel Adams and some additional hops, and we're going to add it to our can of malt extract for Mr. Beer. Well, now we got our supplies, let's get to making some beer. Alright, I want to start this off by showing you a little home brewing trick that you may have to use someday. Now the grains you can either get through your homebrew shop or order online. And if you go to your local homebrew shop, they're more than happy to mill the grains for you. But if you order online or someone just gives them to you or you just plain forget to ask at the shop, I'll show you a little trick you can do at home if you don't have a mill on how to get your grains ready to brew. And all you really need to do is put your grains in a Ziploc bag and take a rolling pin, and we're just going to work over these grains, and you can hear the hulls cracking. Now some people I know have been tempted to throw these into a blender or a food processor or whatever, but that turns it into flour, and that's not what you're looking to do. All we really want when we crush grains is to crack open the hull and allow the water that we use to steep to get in there and get the sugars out. We're not looking to crush or pulverize the grains. So all you really need to do is a nice little roll of the grains here, and like I said, you'll crush, you'll not crush, but you'll crack open those hulls, and that will allow the water to get into those sugars inside, and that's what we're really wanting. So I just thought I'd show you this little trick, and I'm going to do this to 2 pounds of our grain, which is a 60 level bond 2-row caramel malt. And that's what we're using for this. So while I do this, we'll start to heat up 5 quarts of water, and we'll get to our next step. So alright, we've got our 2 pounds of grains prepped, the 2-row 60 Levibond caramel malt. We've got it cracked and ready to go in a little hot bag. You might see some videos that do a similar exercise doing a sparge, but I find this method the easiest. I've heated up 5 quarts of water to roughly 165 degrees. And I'm just going to take our 2 pounds of grain, and we're going to dip it in. And you want to make sure you kind of dip it like a tea bag, and basically what we're making is a grain tea that we'll use to make our beer. So I'll give it a few dips, and then we'll leave it in, and you'll instantly see your water change color. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave the bag in for 30 minutes, and we're going to maintain the temperature around 155 degrees. So we're going to let this sit for 30 minutes. You want to keep an eye on the temperature, and then we'll get to our next step. So we've now allowed our grains to steep at around 155 degrees for 30 minutes. Now that this is done, we're going to take our grains out, we'll let her drain. Alright, now that we drained that bag, now we're going to crank up the heat and we're going to start a boil. Once the water begins to boil, or the wort per se, once it begins to boil, set a timer and we're going to allow it to boil for 1 hour. So we're going to let this heat up, we're going to clean up a little bit, and we'll get to the boil. Alright, so we've been boiling our wort for about 50 minutes, so 10 minutes left in the boil, and it's time to add our can of the Mr. Beer Patriot Lager Extract. You want to be sure to heat this up first, make it easier to pour out. And we're going to pour in, and you want to be sure to stir this because you don't want any of this to scorch on the bottom. So what we've done here is we've made a grain soup with the cracked grains we had, and now we're adding the extract. So we've added more sugars and fermentables to our beer than we would with just this can of extract. We want to make sure to scoop out all this stuff because it's nice and sweet and gooey. And it's what we need for our beer. Alright, we're going to stir this for a minute, and next we'll get to our hop addition. Alright, it's been another 5 minutes, and now we're 55 minutes into the boil, or 5 minutes left, and we're going to add 1 ounce of Hallertauer hop pellets to the boil. And this is going to give us our hop aroma and hop flavor. In the extract, we already had our bittering hops, so that's why we didn't add anything at the start of the boil. So I'm just going to sprinkle our pellets in, and we're going to give her a little stir. And we're going to let this boil for another 5 minutes. At the end of 1 hour, the 60-minute boil, we're going to turn off the flame, and it'll be time to cool down our wort. So let me stir this in, and we'll get to our next step. So we finished our 1 hour boil, and now it's time to cool down the wort. We need to cool the wort down to roughly 70 degrees or somewhere around room temperature. The easiest way I find to do it is just throw it in an ice bath in your sink. Since we've only got about a gallon, it shouldn't take too long. While we're waiting on the wort to cool, it's a good time to sanitize your equipment and do a little cleanup. Once you get done sanitizing your fermenter, I suggest putting in a gallon of filtered water in, which later on we'll add the wort to make our final beer. Well, I'm going to let this cool down, do a little bit of cleaning, and then we'll come back to wrap up. Well, alright, our wort's cooled down, and we've added it to the 1 gallon of water we already had in here. And I had to make a little water addition to get us up to 2 gallons. That's what we're brewing here, is a 2-gallon batch. So I've got our wort cooled down. We have 2 gallons here. And because we're doing a little addition to Mr. Beer, I wanted to take a gravity reading. Now, if you follow the instructions on most of Mr. Beer's kits, you'll get a beer with around 3.7% alcohol by volume. But since we've added a little to it, I did a reading. We're at 10.04 starting gravity, and at the end, when we're done bottling, I'll do another gravity reading and see how high we pushed up the alcohol content. Now, for the rest of this batch, I'm just going to follow Mr. Beer's instructions, which means using the Mr. Beer yeast. Now, if you want to take it again up another notch or two, you could forego the Mr. Beer yeast and use different ale, lager, whatever you want to use for this little project. You can go to your homebrew shop and experiment with it. Also, I'm going to follow the bottling instructions on Mr. Beer. But again, if you want to do something a little different, I've produced a video on bottling. If you want to do a batch prime or whatever, feel free to do that. So, this beer we're going to let, after I pitch the yeast, we're going to let this beer sit for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, we'll bottle, and we'll let the bottle sit for 2 weeks. And after that, it should be ready to put in the fridge and drink. Well, I hope you like this video, and I hope this gets your mind buzzing with different things you can do with the Mr. Beer kits. And as always, if you like what you see or have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and please subscribe to the station so you can get the videos automatically. Well, until next time, bottoms up.